Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are Psalm 2713 Ministries. I am Peter.
And I'm Erika.
Welcome to the next installment of our podcast, Go, which is Go and Make Disciples. So, if you caught us last time, Erika kind of interviewed me, trying to figure out what my backstory was, because there's a story to discipleship. There's a story to everyone's walk. And what we want to do is kind of investigate what that story looks like for us, because it is not a desire of us to create carbon copies of ourselves. That would be a very scary thing. Our goal is to give you examples on what discipleship looks like.
Right. And also to let you know that we're flesh and blood and not a caricature of something, not portraying something that we're not. As we said to you
Right.
last time, what you get when we're sitting down with you is as if you were coming into our home and kind of sitting with us in our living room. I was just thinking, we need like a nice little sofa here for us to have our
Couch time.
conversation, couch time.
Yep.
Yeah, and so that's just so these beginning episodes, we just want to introduce you to us, and then we'll start explaining what God has called us to do in future episodes, and how we can help you and grow in your relationship with Christ or find Christ if you are seeking right now, because a lot of people are seeking. And, like my radio instructor would probably give me an F right now for the number of times I've said,
and I say right, but that's the way it is. All right. So speaking of your radio instructor, right? Let's start taking a step back. Why don't you give us a little picture of you growing up
Okay.
and your faith and your relationship and where that brought you?
Okay. I am the oldest of three, born to parents in Northeast Vermont, call ourselves the Frozen Chosen. Grew up in a wonderful town. Wow, it's different being on the other side.
Yes, it is.
From the time I was a very small child, I always had this burning hunger to know who God was. And the interesting part of my background is my mom grew up in a home where she had a Catholic father and a Protestant mother.
Mhm.
So she would grow up in Sunday school, and then she would grow up, going to mass with her dad. And it was very hard for her. So when she met my father, who was also a Catholic, she made the commitment that she didn't want to have children brought up in
Mhm.
two churches because it's just very difficult. So what she did is she converted to Catholicism. However, I call her a Protecatholic because she brought her very deep Protestant roots into our family. And we had prayer time and we had learning time, and we read from Bible stories every night, and we were taught so many things. But on the other side of it, the Catholic roots of my family taught me faith, the depth of faith. My dad's parents were very devout. They believed that God could accomplish anything. When something went wrong, everybody got called to pray. My relatives in the States, my relatives in Canada, you name it, and we would see God move. In another episode, I can tell you a few of
We'll
those
dive into
really
some of that.
cool stories, because we do serve a God who today still wants to do miracles. So I grew up in this home, which I kind of feel was very rich in faith. I grew up with more of an understanding of what a relationship was, because I grew up in this Protecatholic environment. I received, as a young child, my brother and I received a set of records, of Bible story records from my aunt. And we thought they were the coolest because, back in the 70s, story records were like
Mhm.
really great. And they had songs on one side and a couple Bible stories on the other side. And at the end of those Bible stories, they would always have this salvation message and this call to be saved and telling you to bow your head and close your eyes. And my brother and I would get on our little knees and we would seek God and we would say, yes, thank you for coming in and saving me and changing my heart. And little did we know
Mm.
that those were the seeds. And so I really feel at that point in time in my life, so I probably was about
I was
seven or
going to
eight,
ask how old were
seven or
you at
eight
that
years
time?
old.
Yep.
I had this change in hunger. It wasn't that I didn't before, but it was
Mhm.
different because there was this seed that
Now
was
the seed got
planted, right,
planted.
in
Right.
me.
Right.
And not saying that I was a perfect child by any means, because there's only one who is perfect, but there was this tug for
Mhm.
me.
Yep.
And when I was about 7 years old, the youngest of our clan was born, my sister, and she was born with what we now know is a very rare autosomal genetic disorder. Another story for another day. But it became very difficult
Mhm.
growing up,
Yep.
living in moments of will she live, will she die, will she
Right.
live, will she die, and it was in that time of not understanding um, what was going on with her that God came to me and I saw him.
Yep.
And he
Right.
didn't speak to me, but he just smiled at me. And it was at that very moment in time that I knew it was going to be okay. And so there was always this fundamental hunger within me. And there was also this hunger to do what the righteous thing was. When I was a kid, if there was a kid that was new in school, the first thing my mother would say to me is, have you made friends with them yet?
Yep.
Well, no, I haven't. Well, why haven't you? Or there would be children in my class who came from very poor backgrounds, because many people look at the area I grew up in Vermont as almost like New England's Appalachia. Very, very poor. And it was very dependent upon where you
Mhm.
lived, the neighborhood, the
Yep.
area of
Yep.
the
The
county. And
other side of the tracks really brings
very
meaning
much.
to it.
Yes,
Yes.
very much.
Yep.
And so, there would be kids that would be teased and picked on and things like that. And my mother again would say, have you made friends with
Yeah.
them? So, in a sense, that didn't make me a very popular child, but I was always reinforced at home that it's the right thing to do. You do to other people what you want them to do with you. So
Yep.
I might not have won myself friends. I might not have been welcomed into a clique, but I can tell you, my mom, who worked in the school district for decades, would run into
Mm.
these kids I had schooled with and little things I didn't even remember and be like, your daughter made a difference in my life.
Yes.
So there was just always this hunger for the least of these. Uh, there was this one song that we used to sing in church, and I'm trying to remember it, but it talks about
Yeah. The least of doing, and to
doing
the
to the
least
least
of
of
these, you
these.
did it unto me.
Yes,
Yes.
and I always remember singing that and going, yeah, I was the one who, and I still am, because I was always the one who wanted to rescue, and I was always the one who
Yep.
wanted to take care of, and and that extends into my adult life. And so I really felt this call to serve God. But growing up as I did as a Catholic, and I am not bashing Catholics, and I think that's really, really important,
Sure. Yep.
because my salvation came as a Catholic. There was a charismatic element to the Catholic Church I grew up in. So I just want to kind of put that aside right
Yes.
away. But there would be retreats that we would go on, and people that would speak to into my heart in these retreats, and it would just like stir me, and I'm like, I just want to serve God for my whole life. And growing up in the Catholic Church, you have to understand that you have to take holy orders to serve God. Now, when I was a kid, my brother and I used to have mass all the time. I would say mass in our living room, and I wanted to be close to God in everything. If the church was open and my brother was serving as an altar server, because there weren't girl altar servers back then, If there was, I would have been one.
Yep.
You know, I would be at mass with him all week long, you know, kind of a thing. I just loved being in the presence of God. And there was just a sacredness, and there still is a sacredness for me,
Yep.
being in that environment. But and then I'll let you jump in. When I was in high school, going to these retreats, going to these conferences, it was in my mind, it was a preset notion that in order for me
Right.
to be able
Yep.
to serve God with all my self, that I would have to take holy orders.
Right.
So at that point in time, I was looking at the potential
Right.
of becoming a
Right.
nun.
So that flows exactly to where I wanted to go. So let's fast forward 10, 12 years, and now we meet at college. And what goes on and what happens?
So this is my funny story, right? So I'm sitting one day in the student lounge. I commuted to college, and so I would go up and just hang out for the whole day, depending on what my class load was that day. So I was waiting in between my classes, and I was sitting there with a couple of my cousins who were also students at the college at the time, and I said to the Lord, and then I said to them, I said, if I don't meet the man I'm going to marry while I'm in college,
Yep.
I know that is God's sign to me that I'm supposed to go and become a nun and enter
Yep.
the convent.
Right.
And I can remember my mother saying to me, but Erika, you want to be a mom, you want to have kids. And I would say, I got that all handled. I'm going to run an orphanage. And she would say, but people are going to adopt the kids. And I would be like, I won't let them. You know, I had this whole like
It's all planned out.
concocted scheme. And so literally 2 days after I had said that and I had prayed that in the student lounge, I met you.
Yep. Right. So it kind of course corrected, right? We talked a little bit the last time about course correction, and you had a life-based course correction. So let's fast forward a little bit more. We're married. We are moved away. You have been removed from the geographic location of your parents and of your entire extended family as well for the very first time. We have our son was born, and let's kind of talk through that a little bit.
It was a very exciting but lonely and homesick time. I can remember, telling you I missed my mountains. I felt like Heidi.
Yep.
And I missed my mountains, and I missed being able to go to the store and run into somebody I was related to or knew.
And talk for 2 and 3 hours.
Right.
Yeah.
But I also knew that I needed to leave, and I needed to become my own person, my own adult. And when we were there, in about a period, I think, of like 5 or 6 months, my cousin got saved, then my brother got saved, then
Right.
my mother got saved, and God was just, and this was happening up in
Up
Vermont.
in Vermont, right?
And
yeah.
they were like calling me, telling me all this stuff, and I was just like, oh my word, oh my word, oh my word. And I'm just listening to all this stuff, and they're like, and we're in this Bible study, and we're this, and we're that, and the other. And my heart is just like ache, ache, ache. And as you shared in our last podcast about how I had looked at you when we drove into town and went, oh,
Right.
isn't that a sweet little church? Wouldn't it be great?
Yeah.
If we can't find
anything,
let's just go
Yep.
there. It's convenient. It's right. We could walk. And that night, when I was just like sitting there, like a horse getting ready to race, and Terry, the lady who came into the nursery that night, started talking to me, I was like, just tell me what I need to
Yeah.
do. Just
Yeah.
tell me what I need to do.
Do you know who Jesus is? No, just tell me what I need to do because I already got this,
Yes,
right?
yes. And so got saved. In that process.
In a way, it was a rededication,
and
right?
And
Yeah.
this is why.
Yeah.
My brother, so we decided to move into a more kind of family-friendly little
Yes.
apartment.
Yes, yes.
And my brother came down from Vermont, and your brother came.
Yes.
And we were packing everything up and moving, and my brother was helping me set up our bedroom, and I had a record player, and we were unpacking the records, and I went, oh, isn't this oh, look, I found these records. And so he's like, we should just put them on just for fun. So we put on one of the stories and we're just like, oh, this is so cute. And then all of a sudden,
The
the
salvation
salvation,
message.
yes.
Yep.
And we literally froze in place. And I looked at him and he looked at me and we went, you mean we've been saved this whole time and we didn't know it?
Yep. Yep.
And I think sometimes that's something that maybe could have happened to somebody listening to us. When my father did not understand anything that was going on,
Right.
called me one day
Right.
because, let's face it, my mom was kind of being a little pushy
Yep.
because she wanted him saved.
Yes, absolutely.
And he called me over lunch when she wasn't home and he's like, would you just explain this thing to me? And I was like, Dad, like, you know how when we grow up in the church and we say the Apostles' Creed or the Nicene Creed, I said, let's go through it line by line. And I went through it line by line with him. You know, I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. I said, do you believe that? And we went through each single proclamation. And I said, Dad, do you believe all that?
Yep.
And he went, of course I do. And I went, and you profess that, you believe that? Yes, I do. Well, Dad, then you're saved. So let's just tell God, thank you for revealing yourself to us. And in that day, I get a phone call that afternoon from my mother going,
Yes.
what did you do? And I said, I just showed him what was already there.
Yeah.
And in so many of our lives, I think we get drowned out by religion
Yep.
and
Yep.
don't understand the importance of relationship. And I think that's what happened to me. It was like all of a sudden I went from, I knew Jesus was my friend, kind of a thing, you know, and that he was with me all the time. And I sang all the songs and did all the things. But when all of a sudden, you always call it spiritual postnasal
Postnasal
drip,
drip.
right? So when it went from here
And
to
it's only
here,
because I live with it all the time.
I know,
Yeah.
it went from here to here. It was like that aha moment that I get it. And you know, there's so much more to my story that I could tell, but I am the funny thing about all the ums is we met in college. He was the meteorology major. I was a radio communications
Yes.
major, and we met in a radio station originally. My professor would knock off points every time the word was in one of your recordings. So every time we record something, I'm just like, "Ugh."
Can't say it.
So I'm going to go back as I mix this recording and count how many times I said and go from there.
So why don't you close us out with, I'm always struck by your salvation story and the rededication, right? Why don't you comment on how your life is an example of the seeds being planted, right? And watered and being on soil and waiting, right? You had seeds planted at 7 years old, and it wasn't for a time until that seed really, really had the opportunity to take root.
Right. And there is that age of accountability, right? So I was a young child and I didn't understand it. Scripture talks about when I was a child, I thought like a child, right?
Yep.
So for me, I truly believe that every single one of those times, although you only need to do it once, but every single one of those times that you would get on your knees and pray that prayer at the end of that story, that had meaning to me. Going to confession had meaning for me because I didn't want to carry the weight of the sin in my life. So allowing God, putting different people in my life through my religious education classes, through the stories my mother read, through going to the Protestant church for different services with my grandmother, all of those different things, the devoutness in prayer, learning how to pray from my dad's very Catholic parents, every single one of them prepared me for that very moment when Terry walked into that nursery,
Yes.
because I was starving
Mm.
for the completion.
Mm-hmm.
When it's like the seed is out of the ground and the plant is growing, and I honestly, I think as plants, right? Because Jesus talks about plants bearing fruit, that
Mm-hmm.
there's still that plant. So there is still, to this day, all of these years later, a hunger in me
Yeah.
to grow,
Yep.
to be more like my Lord and my Savior, and to understand. And this was something that I was praying this morning, actually. I said, Lord, all of these people in the Bible were fallible. They made
Yep.
mistakes. But they loved you and you loved them, and your whole desire was to redeem them.
His whole purpose, his whole desire was,
Yeah,
yes.
and redeem them in their moment of imperfection.
Yep. Yep.
And that's what I guess keeps me going on, and that is what I know a lot of the hunger that we have to disciple others is to fill them with that hope, not give them an excuse for sin, right? Like Paul said, so shall I go on sinning
Yep.
because grace will
Graceful.
increase?
Yep.
No, not at all. We keep growing because that makes God brighter
Right.
and bigger. And so, in a sense, our salvation stories aren't done, right? Because we have to
Sure.
keep running the race.
Yes.
And every day I learn something new.
Yep.
I am so blessed and excited. I think one of the last things that is as God grew you in your walk and you started taking ownership, because for me it was already had been there for so long, and the patience that I had to live to be able to wait for you as God matured you was a very important lesson also for me to learn. There's my uh, and it is very exciting that God planted the seeds for this ministry so many years
Yep.
ago, like
Yep.
2.5 decades ago. And we're now at this place where it's not like you just matured, but where we're at this place where it's like, I can remember you saying to me years ago, it's going to be when we're this age.
Yeah.
And now we're this age, and now we're kind of seasoned, and it's exciting to see what God is
Yes.
going to want to
Yes.
do.
So as she talks about the seeds of the ministry, we're going to cut it off there.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be for another time, just what's the basis of our ministry and what kind of birthed it, what caused it, and where we were at. So I want to thank everybody for joining us while I interviewed Erika and her background. I appreciate everybody viewing. If you have questions for us, like the video, feel free to post any comments, and we'll be sure that we incorporate them into future podcasts.
And make sure to subscribe to our channels.
Yes.
Hit the subscribe button on this video, and you can go and you can see all of the other podcasts and ministry videos that we put
Sermons and all.
together.
Yes.
Because our heart is to build a library to help equip you to find Jesus and grow in him.
All right. So thank you very much for joining us, and
See
we
you
will
next
see you
time.
again. Bye-bye.